The sirens never came. James lay on the cold pavement, the child in his arms barely breathing, her small feverish hand twitching in his blood-streaked shirt. Snow fell steadily, silent witnesses to the tragedy Mary never showed up for. She was somewhere else, raising a toast to another man's birthday, her first love. Not even a text, not even a call. Just a cold message left unread hours ago. Don't wait up, it's just an old friend's party. He waited anyway. He begged a stranger to help. He flagged cars that didn't stop. When the child's whimper faded into stillness, he screamed until his lungs tore, but no one came. His final moments weren't filled with peace, only pain, betrayal, and the fading grip of a child who had done nothing to deserve this. And then it all went black. James opened his eyes, breathless, heart hammering, only to be met with blinding sunlight through a cracked classroom window. His back was straight against a rickety chair. His uniform clung tight across his shoulders, the sound of chalk on a blackboard, laughter outside, and the voice that haunted him. James, hey! He turned slowly. There she was, Mary, younger, softer, wearing that sky-blue ribbon she used to tie on school festival days. Her eyes sparkled with a kind of innocence that felt like a cruel joke. She leaned in from the desk behind his, her voice gentle, uncertain. "Wanna be my boyfriend?" she whispered. He stared at her like she was a ghost. Not this time. He straightened his collar, pulled his textbook closer, and muttered flatly, "Don't say disgusting things like that, ever." Her smile froze. That day, James learned two things. 1. This wasn't a dream, the memories were too vivid, the air too real, and the ache in his chest from the child he lost was still there, etched into his soul like a second heartbeat. 2. He had been given a second chance, to make different choices, to know, and waste his youth orbiting a girl who once didn't even pause her celebration while he died on the street. She hadn't even lied about it. She told him it was an old friend, and that old friend had touched her lower back in the pictures she posted online hours later. The same hands that once ruined his marriage and his name. So no, James wouldn't waste time chasing her again. Let them talk. Let them whisper. Let them wonder what changed. He didn't care anymore. He stood when the bell rang, walked past her without a glance, and ignored the way her eyes followed him. Outside, the wind hit his face, the same wind from that snowy night. But this time, there was no child in his arms, no blood on his shirt, no need to wait. James exhaled. This life would not belong to Mary. He didn't owe her anything, and he sure as hell wasn't going to let her hurt him again. In second-year Class F, James wasn't just another student, he was Mary's James. That's what they used to call him. The boy who fetched her favorite milk tea every morning before first period. The one who knew the exact temperature she liked it at, who carried her umbrella on cloudy days even when the sky was clear. He ran across campus for her lunch orders, skipped morning self-study if she so much as sniffled, and wrote apology letters to teachers on her behalf when she forgot homework. No one asked him to. Mary never begged. She didn't have to. Because James worshipped her, openly, shamelessly, blindly. He was the boy who once stood on the assembly podium with a bouquet in hand and confessed to her in front of the entire school. And when she laughed and walked away, he didn't stop. He stayed, clung harder, fought harder, loved her harder, like love was a battle of endurance and not a matter of choice. In his first life, he thought persistence would win her heart. Now, all he felt was disgust. At her, at himself, at the memory of kneeling in the snow beside their wrecked car while she posted Instagram stories from a candlelit table, sipping wine with John. This time, James walked into the classroom without looking at her. No smile, no wave, no milk tea in hand, just his textbook and a sharpened pencil. Students noticed immediately. Did he forget today? Is Mary mad at him? He didn't even say hi to her. The whispers curled through the classroom like smoke. Mary glanced back over her shoulder, lips pressed into a confused frown. Her desk was empty, no snacks, no note, no James. She craned her neck toward the hallway, nothing. He didn't come running when she dropped her pen. He didn't offer his jacket when the classroom got chilly. When she pretended to yawn with a sore throat during reading, he didn't rush off to buy herbal candy like he usually did. He just sat at his desk. Silent. Still. Focused. When break came, she stomped toward him, the whole class watching. "James," she said sharply, "what's wrong with you lately?" He didn't lift his eyes from his notebook. "Nothing." Her voice rose. "You didn't even bring—" "I don't bring anything for people anymore." There was a beat of silence. Then laughter, scattered, nervous. Some students gasped, others turned away awkwardly. Mary stared at him like she'd been slapped. Lisa, her seatmate, leaned in with a smirk. "Looks like the leash finally snapped." Mary ignored her. She walked back stiffly, red creeping up her neck. And across the room, someone was watching. Patricia sat by the window in the back row, always quiet, always polite. Tidy hair pulled back with a thin clip. Her notebooks were color-coded, her handwriting was elegant, her uniform was always pristine. She rarely spoke, except when called on, and even then, her answers were clean and correct. She'd ranked first in every mock exam since the start of the semester, and now, she was watching James like a student studying a problem she hadn't seen before. She noticed things others didn't, how he no longer tapped his pencil when Mary passed, how he stopped glancing toward the hallway at lunch, how his eyes were always tired now, not with laziness, but with the burden of someone trying to run from ghosts. The change wasn't subtle, it was seismic. After school, James didn't walk Mary home like usual. He picked up his bag and left on his own. No looking back, no lingering. Mary waited by the school gate that day, for 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. He never came. That night, she messaged him. "Mary, are you okay?" James, "Yeah." Mary, "Did I do something?" James, "No." Mary, "I miss the old James." He didn't reply. Instead, he pulled out a stack of practice books he'd never touched in his first life and began solving problems until dawn. The next day, he asked the teacher for the Class A entrance requirements. "You're in F class, James," the teacher laughed. "Class A is a long shot." James didn't smile. "Then I'll aim for something longer than a shot." During self-study, he borrowed old tests from the library and read through Class A's curriculum. When Patricia passed by his desk during break, he stopped her. "Can you help me understand this?" She looked at him, surprised. "This is Class A level." "I know." "You want to transfer?" "I want to get as far away from her as possible." Patricia blinked, then nodded. "All right, I'll help you." And just like that, James found a new rhythm: study, revise, focus. No Mary, no distractions. When rumors started again, they weren't about Mary's loyal lapdog. They were about James and the genius girl from Class A, the tutor and the reformed fool, the cold boy and the calm girl. Do you think they're dating? Isn't she way out of his league? Maybe she feels sorry for him. James didn't care. Patricia didn't either. She was a girl of few words but unwavering commitment. She corrected his equations with red pen, highlighted passages he missed, and when the rest of the school stared at her for sitting beside James during lunch, she simply said, "He's paying me to tutor him. What's your problem?" James smirked at that. She never asked about Mary. She didn't dig into the past. She only asked one question. "What do you want, James?" He paused. Then answered. "To protect the version of me that died." "Then let's start," Patricia said. And they did. At first, Mary assumed it was a phase. James must have been sulking, maybe trying to make her jealous, maybe tired of always giving, maybe he wanted her to miss him a little. So she played along. When he didn't bring her the usual carton of warm milk in the morning, she made sure to sigh loud enough for the whole class to hear. When he passed her desk without glancing, she accidentally dropped her pen. When he didn't bend down to pick it up, she frowned. Still, she stayed patient. After all, she was Mary. He always came back. But a week passed. Then two. James didn't flinch. He walked in, sat down, opened his books. Nothing more. When she tried to start a conversation, "Hey, did you see that movie?" he said, "I'm studying." When she poked him from behind with her pen, he moved his chair forward. When she waited by the gate after school, he exited through the back. It wasn't just silence anymore, it was erasure. Mary wasn't used to being ignored. She was the kind of girl people stared at in hallways, the kind whose birthday always trended on class group chats, the one whose mood decided what the group watched at lunch. And James had been her biggest audience. Now he was walking out of the theater before the curtains even opened. One Friday, during dance club practice, she misstepped during a turn and twisted her ankle. she cried out, falling hard on the polished floor. Her teammates gasped and ran to her. She gritted her teeth through the pain, scanning the crowd that had gathered. He wasn't there. James was usually the first to appear when she was hurt. In her first life, he once sprinted 4 blocks just to bring her a hot compress for a sprained wrist. Another time, he stayed up all night researching home remedies when she complained of a sore back after rehearsal. Now he didn't even look up from his textbook. Lisa, her classmate, approached him during break. Hey, didn't you hear? Mary got hurt. He flipped a page. Hope she recovers. She twisted her ankle badly. That's unfortunate. Lisa stared at him. Don't you care? James finally looked up, eyes flat. No. Mary waited at her desk, biting her lip, thinking maybe he'd still do it. Maybe he'd still show up like always, but he didn't. That night, James's mother handed him a thermos of freshly made bone broth. Mary's hurt, isn't she? Take this to her. I heard she hasn't eaten well in 2 days. James took it without a word. Then, as the driver pulled up outside Mary's house, he stepped out, walked to the nearest alley, opened the lid, and placed it gently in front of a shivering stray dog. The dog sniffed it, then slurped eagerly. James watched for a moment, then turned around and walked away. He never rang the doorbell, he never looked back. His phone buzzed that night. Mary, did you come? He didn't reply. The next morning, she cornered him at the entrance. Did you bring soup yesterday? No? My maid said she saw your car outside. James shrugged. Guess she was wrong. Her eyes flickered. I waited. I thought. I didn't ask you to. She stepped closer. Why are you doing this? What did I do? James looked her in the eyes. Exactly what you're doing right now. Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. And then came Patricia. At first, she was just a tutor. Quiet, methodical, precise. But one afternoon, when Lisa snidely commented that Patricia must enjoy the attention James gave her, Patricia turned, smiled politely, and said, I enjoy helping those who actually want to improve. That shut Lisa up. When James was ambushed by 3 jealous boys behind the gym, angry that he was getting close to the school's top student, Patricia found him, pulled him away, and scolded them like they were her students instead of her peers. He pays me, I teach, interfere again, and I'll report you. Her voice was soft, but unshakable. Later, as they sat in the library, James mumbled, You didn't have to do that. She didn't look up from her notes. Didn't do it for you, I did it for my income. He smirked. Still, she checked his arm for bruises, and still, the scent of lychee lingered every time she leaned over his notebook to explain a formula. Mary noticed. She noticed how Patricia walked past her without so much as a nod, how James now only smiled when Patricia said something dry and clever, how they left the class together, sat together, studied together. When Mary tried to bring James his favorite drink, he said, I don't drink sweet things anymore. When she asked, Can we just talk for 5 minutes? He replied, I only talk during study sessions. When she stayed up until 3 a.m., writing a heartfelt message, pouring her heart out, admitting maybe she had taken him for granted, he left her on red. The next day, she arrived at school with a limp, but still with her head held high. She forced herself to laugh louder, to shine brighter. She wore the perfume James once complimented, sat close enough for him to smell it. He didn't blink. Instead, he turned to Patricia and whispered, Quiz me on the last 10. Mary's hand tightened around her pencil. It snapped. James didn't look. He was too busy reclaiming the life he never had a chance to live. Too busy chasing the version of himself who once died for someone who never cared. And somewhere between silence and sentences, Patricia started to lean in, not just as a tutor, but as a quiet friend, a steady anchor. She never touched him, never flirted, but when she handed him a red-inked page full of corrections and said, Do it again, better this time, he heard something deeper than advice. He heard respect. The one thing Mary had never offered, even when he gave her everything, and now that he had stopped giving, she wanted everything back. Too late. Sometimes at night, James would wake up drenched in sweat, breath hitching in his throat, his fingers clenching the edge of his blanket like it was a lifeline. The dream always came in fragments. A child crying in the back seat, a red light blinking on the dashboard, snow smearing across the windshield, and Mary's voice, giggling on a phone call to John, while James screamed for help in a dying battery's glow. He'd sit up, gasping, and for a second forget where he was, until he saw the glow-in-the-dark star stickers on the ceiling of his childhood room. The same ones he'd peeled off 10 years ago. It was the past. And he was here again, alive, breathing, young. But the ache didn't leave. Neither did the memories. Not of the wedding ring Mary threw across their living room during one of their fights. Not of the time she called the baby an accident and confessed she had no idea who the father really was. Not of the icy silence at the hospital after the crash, where her first words weren't, "Is our child okay?" but, "This wasn't supposed to happen." The guilt, the pain, the overwhelming wrongness of it all stuck to his skin like dried blood, and no matter how far back he'd come, it still stung. So when Patricia placed a cup of warm tea beside his notebook during a late-night study session and said softly, "Don't overwork yourself," his heart clenched. He looked at her hand wrapped around her own cup, pale fingers, neatly trimmed nails, no ring, no betrayal, just calmness, just presence. "Thanks," he said, unsure if he deserved it. She nodded. "This chapter's hard, take breaks, I'm here tomorrow too." He stared at her as she scribbled in her notes, focused, undistracted, honest. What scared him wasn't her kindness, it was how much it tempted him. In his first life, Mary's affection had always come in bursts, conditional, earned, and paid for with sacrifice. Patricia gave with oot games. That confused James more than anything. Why would someone help him without asking for anything back? One day after class, as they packed up, Patricia asked, "Why are you so afraid of people being nice to you?" He didn't answer at first, then he whispered, "Because they usually want something." Patricia held his gaze. "What do you think I want?" "I don't know yet. Try asking instead of guessing." He looked away. "I'm not good at trust." She said nothing. But the next day, she showed up again, and the day after, and the next. Each gesture from her, holding an umbrella, defending him against rumors, teaching him patiently, unraveled parts of him that had been tangled in grief and anger. But he still struggled to allow it. He didn't want to fall again, didn't want to misread kindness as care, didn't want to hurt anyone, or be hurt. While James battled his own past, Mary's carefully curated world began to crack. At first, it was the rumors, whispers that James and Patricia were getting too close. Then came the stares, the knowing smiles, the messages from other girls asking if James was free for tutoring too. Mary tried to laugh it off, but it stung. She watched from behind her mirror as James leaned forward during class, just to hear Patricia explain something. Watched him hand her a bottle of water. Watched her smile back. It wasn't just his attention that had shifted, it was his entire orbit. Mary's confidence began to fray. She wore her best perfume, rehearsed casual lines, dropped subtle notes in his locker, all ignored. One afternoon, she stood near his desk, twisting her fingers. "I was thinking," she began, her voice syrupy, "maybe you and I could start over." James looked up, deadpan. "Start what over?" "You know, us." "There's no us, Mary." "There used to be." "There was a mistake," he said quietly, closing his textbook. "I don't make those twice." Mary's jaw clenched, but she wasn't done. That weekend, she showed up at his house, bearing soup, just like he used to do for her. His mother smiled wide, thinking the two were making up, but James barely stepped out of his room. "I didn't ask for it," he said. Mary forced a chuckle. "Is this how you're going to act now, like you don't care?" "I don't." She stared at him. For the first time, she believed him, and that's when John transferred. It started innocently, Mary helping a new student who looked lost. She helped him register, showed him around, introduced him to her friends. But James recognized the face immediately. He hadn't been memorable in their first life, just a pretty boy with a crooked smile and just enough charm to make women feel special. But James remembered his name, remembered his hands on Mary's waist in photos, remembered the way Mary looked at him with a softness James had never earned. This time, John was placed in Class F, right in front of James. Their eyes met. James smiled coldly. "Welcome back." John blinked, confused. "Do I know you?" "Not yet." Patricia noticed the tension immediately. During break, she leaned in. "He bother you?" No, James muttered. He'll try though. She said nothing, but she pulled her desk closer to his. That evening, James walked home alone, thinking about the last time John had entered his life. How Mary had started sneaking out, how she'd said, "We're just friends," with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. How she cried when he confronted her, and then told him he was suffocating her. And now she was laughing with John again. History, it seemed, wanted to rewind. But James wasn't a fool anymore. He wouldn't fight for her attention, he wouldn't beg for crumbs of affection. Let them date, let them implode, let the past repeat, for them, not for him. Because this time, he had someone who saw him, who expected nothing, asked for nothing, and still stayed. Patricia didn't flirt, she didn't push, she didn't pretend, she just showed up. And when he struggled to sleep, she handed him books on mindfulness. When he zoned out in class, she nudged him gently. When he got one of his lowest test scores in weeks, she didn't scold, she simply circled his errors and said, "We fix this, together." One evening, as they sat side by side solving equations, James whispered, "Do you ever feel like your past is still dragging you back?" Patricia paused. "Sometimes." "How do you stop it?" "You don't," she said, "you just walk faster." He looked at her. She didn't blink. And for the first time in both lives, James laughed, soft, brief, real. That same night, Mary posted a story, her and John at a karaoke lounge, her leaning close, his arm around her shoulder. In his first life, that post destroyed him. This time, he blocked her. No comment, no reaction, no rage, just silence. And in that silence, he found peace. When John was introduced to Class F, he wore the same charming half-smile that James remembered from his last life, a casual wave, a confident tone, and eyes that scanned the room until they found Mary. She blinked twice, stunned, and then smiled like she'd just seen a long-lost friend. James already knew what was coming. In his previous life, John had been forgettable at first, an acquaintance, someone Mary knew vaguely from middle school. But slowly, he became everything James wasn't, spontaneous, mysterious, unattached. Mary started comparing, then detaching, then cheating. This time, James didn't give the past a chance to repeat. As soon as John was seated in the row ahead of him, James raised his hand. "I'd like to switch seats." The teacher looked puzzled. "Any reason?" "Just preference." He was moved to the far back corner, beside the windows, 2 rows away from Mary, 3 from John. The air felt lighter instantly. Mary, however, didn't hide her displeasure. She kept glancing back at James as if expecting him to fix it. To take it back. But he didn't. John, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface, went about his charming routine. He helped girls with heavy bags, offered to run errands for teachers, laughed a little too loud. Tossed his hair with deliberate ease. Mary, drawn to the attention, gravitated closer. Soon, they were inseparable. It played out like a déjà vu loop, the late lunches, the giggles, the "we're just friends" explanations when Lisa teased her. James ignored it all. Until John started noticing that Mary's gaze still wandered toward James's corner far too often. That's when the games began. It started with a water bottle. During self-study, John accidentally knocked it over, and the entire contents spilled across the floor toward James's bag. The math notes Patricia had carefully marked for him were soaked before he could react. "Oh, man," John said with faux concern. "So sorry, bro, my hand slipped." James said nothing, just picked up his bag, shook it out, and moved on. Next, it was a tripwire. John stretched out his leg just as James was walking to the front. James stumbled, caught himself on a desk, and walked on. Mary chuckled, lightly, nervously. Then, one day, it escalated. James had gone to fill his water bottle during break. When he returned, John stood holding it with both hands, wide-eyed, shouting, "Hey, I just wanted to give it to you, no need to be so aggressive." James froze. Half the class turned. "What are you talking about?" he asked coolly. "You grabbed it from me, hard," John insisted, lifting his wrist to show a faint red mark. James hadn't even touched him. "Stop lying," Patricia said from behind. Everyone turned. It was rare for her to speak at all, let alone get involved. "I saw the whole thing," she continued calmly. "James didn't touch you. You picked it up and started shouting." The class murmured. Someone even laughed. John's face darkened, but he masked it with a tight smile. Just a misunderstanding. James didn't reply. He took the bottle back and walked to his seat. Mary stared at John for a long time after that. Later that week, during a lab experiment, John asked James to pass a beaker. James, tired of the charade, reached out, but John deliberately loosened his grip. The beaker slipped, shattered, and boiling water splashed up, catching both boys. John yelped in pain, grabbing his wrist, collapsing to the floor dramatically. James flinched as the hot water hit his skin, his jaw tightening, but said nothing. His hand had turned red, the burn immediate, but his reaction was cold, composed. Mary rushed forward. Everyone expected her to go to John. He was on the floor, after all. But she went to James. "What are you doing?" she snapped at him, grabbing his hand and inspecting the burn. "This is second degree at least. Why didn't you move?" "I did," James muttered. Patricia stood beside him, already pulling out a small tube of burn cream from her tote. John, still groaning on the floor, looked up. "Mary, can I get some help too?" Mary didn't even glance at him. "Are you blind?" she yelled at him instead. "You poured boiling water in the wrong direction. That wasn't even close to you." The class went silent. John blinked in disbelief. Lisa whispered to Martin, "Did she just defend James?" Patricia knelt beside James, gently dabbing the cream on his hand. "It'll sting for a bit." "I'm used to worse," James replied quietly. Mary, still gripping his other wrist, looked conflicted. "You should go to the infirmary," she said. He pulled his hand away. "I'll manage." "But it looks serious." "I'll manage," he repeated. Mary bit her lip. The teacher walked in, and the moment dissolved. But something had changed. For the first time, Mary had chosen James over John. For the first time, she looked at John with disappointment. And for the first time, James found that he didn't feel anything at all. No satisfaction, no victory, just emptiness. Because it was too late. Even if she defended him now, even if she begged, even if she finally saw what she should have seen long ago, none of it undid what she let happen. What she chose before. What she allowed to rot. After class, as they walked out, Patricia glanced at him. "You okay?" "I'll be fine." "That's not what I asked." James looked at his hand, freshly bandaged, then at Patricia, whose eyes were calm, unreadable. "I don't think it matters anymore," he said. "Whether she defends me or not, that chapter's over." Patricia nodded. "Good." And then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Because new chapters read better when the old ones finally close. 2 weeks before her birthday, Mary cornered James after school. She wore a peach-colored cardigan and a soft smile she hadn't shown in months. Her tone was lighter than usual, almost playful, but her hands clutched the strap of her bag with nervous intensity. "Hey," she said, "do you have plans the day after tomorrow?" James didn't look up from his notes. "Studying." Mary took a deep breath. "I'm having a birthday party. The class will be there. It's at the Garden Manor. Remember the one we used to hang out at?" He remembered. In his first life, that manor was where he confessed to her under the fireworks she claimed to love. That same night, she had laughed with her friends behind his back, mocking how intense he was. But James didn't flinch now. His pencil didn't stop moving. "I have plans," he said. She hesitated. "It's important." "I'm busy." She lingered for a moment longer, hoping for something, an excuse, a softening, anything, but he said nothing more. Eventually, she turned away, quietly muttering, "I'll still wait for you." James didn't reply. That night, he sat on the rooftop of the school, alone. The breeze was cold, sharp with late autumn bite. In his hand was a folded paper airplane, aged from being tucked in the back of his notebook for weeks. On it was a name he used to write over and over, Mary. Alongside a smaller one, Hope, the name they had chosen for their child, the one who never made it. He lit a match and held it to the wing. Flames caught fast. He watched it curl and blacken, ashes falling onto the concrete. His hand didn't tremble, his eyes didn't water. He closed them and whispered, "If you come back to me someday, please come back as my child again. I promise I'll protect you, I'll do it right." And then he stood, wiped the ash from his palms, and walked away from the past once and for all. Mary's birthday came. The manor was strung with light, balloons, and a heart-shaped arch made of roses. Her classmates arrived one by one, bearing gifts and smiles, unaware of the storm brewing inside her chest. Lisa handed her a wrapped perfume bottle. Martin dropped off a music box. Even John offered her a hair clip, cheap, plastic, not even her style, but she forced a smile. Her eyes never left the entrance. Every few seconds, she checked her phone. No messages. The party began, fireworks were prepared, a heart made of candles was lit in the center of the garden, a letter she had rewritten 10 times waited in her purse. It was 3,000 words long. She had planned everything, except the one thing that mattered: James never came. When the party ended and her classmates dispersed with sleepy laughter and empty cups, Mary stood alone in the candlelit garden, staring at the unlit cake. She waited. And waited. Until the candles melted and the frosting collapsed under the drizzle. She didn't cry, not yet. At 3:07 a.m., she stood in James's yard, soaked in cold rain, holding the cake with trembling hands. The umbrella she brought had long since folded, her hair stuck to her skin, her shoes were ruined, but she stood still. James stepped outside, slowly. He didn't rush to greet her. He held a small umbrella above his head and stopped 5 paces away. "You shouldn't be here." She raised her head, her lips were blue from the cold. "Why didn't you come?" He didn't answer. "I waited for you." He still didn't speak. She stepped forward, hands cupping the soggy cake box. "I brought the one you like, strawberry cream, it's tradition. We blow out the candles together, remember?" James looked at her, really looked, and then, with a voice colder than the rain falling around them, he said, "I never said I was coming." Mary's expression faltered. "But you always came. That was the old James." Her eyes glossed. "Then who are you now?" "The one who doesn't like you anymore," he replied. "And doesn't even want to be friends." She took a shaky breath. "You don't mean that." "I do." Her voice cracked. "James, I love you now." His gaze didn't soften. "It's too late." Mary's lips trembled. "I've changed." "No," James said. "You've noticed I changed. That's different." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know how much you meant to me until I lost you." James tilted his head. "You didn't lose me. You threw me away." "I didn't mean to, but you did." His tone didn't waver. "Every time you chose someone else, every time you laughed at me with your friends, every time you saw my efforts and gave silence in return." Her hands clenched around the box. "That was the past. And this is the present," James said, "where I don't feel anything for you anymore. Not love, not hate, just nothing." Mary's voice dropped to a whisper. "What about the memories?" "I buried them." Her knees buckled slightly, the rain fell harder, but James didn't move forward. He didn't offer the umbrella. He didn't step under hers. Instead, he looked up at the sky. "Let's end this," he said, "right here." Mary stared at him, silent, frozen. Then she whispered, "Please, just take the cake, blow out the candle." He glanced at the candle, flickering under the rain. "No," and turned around. "James," she called behind him, her voice hollow. He didn't stop. He walked into the house and shut the door behind him. She stood there for a long time, and when she finally dropped the cake box, it landed in a ruined, wet heap. The final rankings were posted on a Thursday. Students crowded around the bulletin board, elbowing one another, phones held high to snap photos of the list. Murmurs spread like static, excited squeals, sighs of disappointment, cheers from Class A, and then, "Wait, isn't that James? James from Class F?" Martin shoved his way to the front, eyes scanning the top 10. There it was, rank 7, James Lynn. He stared at it like it was a typo. Lisa blinked twice. No way, he really did it. Mary stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching her bag tighter as her throat tightened. Patricia stood a few feet away, expression unreadable, until James emerged from the hallway with his usual slow steps, hands in pockets, eyes calm. The crowd parted. No cheers, no claps. Just stunned silence. He didn't react, just looked at the board once, nodded, and turned to leave. Martin ran after him, teary-eyed. Bro, you're going to Class A. That's huge. I'm going to miss you, man. James smirked. You better get your grades up and join me. I'm not coming back down here. Martin sniffled. I'll try. No promises, though. Lisa walked up with a small notebook. Don't forget where you came from. We Class F people still claim you. He raised an eyebrow. As long as I don't have to carry your books again. She punched his shoulder. Just take it. He did. Flipping through the notebook, he found notes scribbled by different classmates, wishes of luck, doodles, snack coupons, even an old photo of them arm wrestling. He closed it gently and nodded. And then came Mary. She walked slowly, her expression soft, hesitant. I packed your bag, she said quietly, offering him his school bag, already zipped, everything folded neatly. I knew you'd forget. He took it wordlessly. Thanks. She didn't move. Can I walk you there? He didn't answer. From behind them, Patricia appeared, calm as ever, holding 2 books. And a folded uniform jacket. She stepped beside James naturally, handed him his jacket, and turned to Mary. I'm taking him. Mary froze. Patricia's voice remained steady. I've always taken care of my own students. And just like that, she looped her arm around James's and began walking toward the Class A building. James didn't resist. He let her lead. Mary stood in place, fingers curled around nothing. As they entered the hallway of Class A, Patricia pushed open the door. The top-ranking students barely looked up until she walked straight to the second desk by the window, hung James's bag on the chair, and patted the seat beside her. Welcome back. James paused, looked around at the polished floor, the high windows, the trophies lining the cabinet, and smiled. Nice to meet you again, Patricia, he said, taking his seat. I'm James, from Class A. The semester passed in a blur. Rumors of his rise never stopped, how he'd gone from Mary's lapdog to one of the school's top scorers, how Patricia had taken him in like a project and turned him into someone who didn't just walk with confidence, but led with it. Meanwhile, Mary's grades dropped, her presence faded. She started showing up at the door of Class A during breaks, holding lunchboxes, water bottles, excuses to see James, but every time, she met a cold look, or none at all. Sometimes he wasn't there. Sometimes Patricia was the one who opened the door. And sometimes, James would just walk past without pausing, like she was a hallway poster, once bold, now peeling at the edges. Still, she chased him. Like he once did her. The roles had reversed, but James didn't slow down. Because now, he had a different destination entirely. He applied to a university in the capital, far from the city, far from the ghosts, far from anyone who ever saw him as less than what he really was. He chose a major in education psychology, partly because of Patricia, partly because he wanted to understand how people break, and how they heal. On the day of his departure, the campus was quiet. He'd said his goodbyes. Martin cried again. Lisa gave him a lucky charm. Even a few Class A students wished him well. Patricia was the last to arrive. She wore her usual pale cardigan, her bag slung over her shoulder, her bun slightly looser than usual. James smiled. You're not crying? I'm not done with you yet, she said. University has email, messaging apps, and student housing visits. He chuckled. So you're stalking me. She rolled her eyes. I'm ensuring the investment pays off. They walked to the airport in silence, side by side. At the gate, she pulled out a thermos. Tea, same as always, you'll need it. He took it. Thanks. She looked at him then, a little longer than usual. You know, if you ever get tired, you don't have to carry everything alone. James held her gaze. I know. Just as he turned to enter the boarding line, a voice called out behind him. James! It was Mary. She was breathless, hair windblown, suitcase wheels squeaking behind her. She wore a denim jacket over a white dress, the one he used to like. She walked quickly, stopping just short of him. I'm retaking the college entrance exams this year. He said nothing. I'll get into the same university, I promise. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I love you. The words fell between them like a stone in water. He didn't flinch. I'm not waiting, Mary. Her expression faltered. But, just a year, that's all I'm asking. James shook his head. Don't waste your time. The boarding line moved forward. I know I was selfish, she whispered. But I'm trying now. Doesn't that mean something? It means you realize too late. Her eyes welled up. Please, can I have a hug before you go? James paused. Then stepped back. The distance between them grew. And then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the gate. Mary stood frozen, blinking against the harsh lights. James, she called, I'll still find you, I will. He didn't stop. He slipped in his earphones. The plane smelled of new leather, recycled air, and something sweet, lychee. He turned to see Patricia already in her seat, her legs crossed, her gaze calm as ever. She smiled softly. Well, looks like it's your turn now. My turn? He asked. To be protected, she said. James looked at her for a moment, then out the window. The clouds outside glowed with gold as the plane taxied toward the runway. And for the first time in 2 lives, he smiled, fully, freely, without guilt.